To the Email Design Podcast. This is your home for all things email. Geek out over design, development, and marketing. As always, it's your favorite host. I'm Kevin Mandeville.
And I'm Jason Rodriguez.
And coming for you today, we are going to be answering your questions from the Litmus community, litmus.com/community. It's really a free email resource, email repository of knowledge. You can go there, ask questions, mainly ask questions. That's what people love about it, around your email challenges. And there's a bunch of smart people answering them there. And it's all for free, which is amazing. So we're going to go through, answer some of our favorite questions recently from the community and sort of give you our answers on them. So what do we got up first, Jason?
So the first one is from Rasmus, who is talking about the Outlook app on iOS and whether or not you can use MSO conditionals. So if you're used to targeting Outlook on desktop that uses the Microsoft Word rendering engine, you know you can use that if MSO conditional comment. You can use things like VML, their vector markup language, stuff like that to directly target that Microsoft Word rendering engine. So he's wondering if those same principles apply. You can use that same code for the Outlook iOS app. And unfortunately, you cannot. Since it's not using the Microsoft Word rendering engine, it doesn't have support for things like VML and MSO conditional comments, so you are pretty much out of luck. Good thing to note, though, is I feel like the Outlook iOS app rendering is a little bit better than traditional desktop rendering, so you'll likely run into fewer issues there than you would in desktop Outlook clients, so you likely won't need to target it that way.
Yeah, the apps both on iOS and Android are sort of WebKit-based. Again, not every single email client is 100% WebKit, but basically WebKit-based. So it is better than the Word rendering engine, which is nice. The only mobile instance that uses Word today would be Windows 10 Mobile, but not too many people are using that. And as we went over in one of the recent podcasts, they are going to be discontinuing support for that sooner, like just not focusing on it, right? So good news there. All right. So Robin Clem asked a question around tables being thrown off, and tests on iPhone 7 not working. And this is on iOS 11. So saying, it's the whole layout is completely skewing towards the left and any help would be appreciated. So, not going to get into any table structures around other clients, but in terms of iPhone 7, and actually for iOS 11, and this even started in iOS 10, there's some, as a nature of the rescaling that Apple automatically does in iOS Mail, it's caused a lot of these layout issues. I've never seen it with any of our own emails, but depending on what type of table layout you may have, you may only have it stretched to like half the width of the mobile phone layout when traditionally it's supposed to be full width. But if you just add the simple meta tag of meta name equals x-apple-disable-message-reformatting, if you add that meta tag to your email, it's going to disable any of that auto rescaling that iOS Mail does, and you should just have your email automatically convert back to the full width email that you're expecting to have. So you just need to be aware that potentially in some scenarios, iOS 10 and above will be rescaling your emails in iOS Mail. You can just add this meta tag and that should solve it. So it's a quick fix there.
Nice. Love it. A not so quick fix. Ezra Sadie was asking about rounded images in Outlook. So this is a problem that a lot of you have probably seen when you have something like a button or an image where you're using rounded corners. In this case, she has an image. It's a portrait of a person, and she's using border radius of 50% in the CSS to round that image into a circle. That is not displaying in Microsoft Outlook because Outlook does not support that border radius property in the CSS. So she's wondering if there's a way around that, if you can still get those rounded images working in Microsoft Outlook. So there is actually a way to do this, and that's by targeting Outlook specifically. So you're going to use that if MSO conditional comment that you're probably used to. And then you're going to use Microsoft's vector markup language, VML, to essentially replicate that functionality specifically for Outlook. So in this case, there's a V-oval element that you can use in there that allows you to set some styles, then have the V-fill type set to frame, and then you can use the source for your image. So it's creating this rounded image specifically in VML. And then you have all of your other emails seeing that typical, a div or an image tag that has that border radius applied. So you are going to want to hide your default image that all other email clients see. So in this case, Wilbur Heinlein has this great builder example up here. He's using the MSO hide all property on that table that houses that image. So Microsoft won't see that, and it'll only see that VML version of it. But then all your other email clients will fall back to this default HTML and CSS version, which is the good way to go about doing it. So a couple little tricks to do, a little bit harder to implement, but you can still use rounded images inside of Outlook if you need to.
Yeah, really smart. Really liked it. Didn't know you could do V-oval, but I mean, you can do a ton of stuff with VML, so makes sense. And this is actually one of the scenarios to where, I mean, I wouldn't use it for simple border radiuses, but for circular images like this, I would actually consider taking the time to actually do this, as long as it didn't cause too many headaches, because that sort of is, that impacts the design more than just a few pixels of a border radius, right? If you're trying to do a true circle.
Exactly.
So that's quite nice. I would hide just looking at the implementation here, I'd probably hide it just by doing the catch-all statement to comment out the image that's going to show for everything else. So he just uses the if IE and then comments it out with Outlook CSS, but I would probably just comment it out entirely with the HTML conditional comment. But either way that you want, I thought it was really smart. Thanks, Wilbert. So here's a common issue that people always come up with, and if you aren't paying attention, you can always be like, what's going on here? Especially with more complex layouts. So Sarbg asks, how to avoid Gmail to assume text of a newsletter as a quote and avoid the purple color text. So Gmail has this native default styling in emails for any threaded emails, which is a part of what they call their conversation view. Any duplicate content, they try to block quote it, they try to add purple styling text. There's no way to control that through the threaded view. The only way to get around that and from seeing that is to just delete all previous messages from that thread. So if you're testing the same email with the same subject line and it comes in as a thread, just delete all past instances and revisit the email, and it shouldn't have that styling applied to it. Or you could just disable conversation view and that threading behavior in your settings of your Gmail account. But this is something that a lot of people get confused on because they think it's an actual rendering issue in Gmail that was caused when they're testing their HTML emails over and over again, but it's just simply a threading view. And sometimes it's super easy to see if it's like, a plain text type looking email or it's against like a white background, but sometimes it's harder to figure out if it's a really minor thing in like, with darker backgrounds on a more designed template or something. So just watch out for it. I always make it a case. If I ever send a retest, I always make sure I just delete the previous one because it's old and I don't need to look at it. Or if it is that important, just give it a different subject line so it doesn't thread or whatnot. So just, you got to look out for that.
Yeah,
stuff.
One of those instances where just understanding the email client, how it behaves, and recognizing what you can and cannot fix using HTML and CSS. So definitely good tips there. All right, we're going to take a quick break and remind everybody to check out all of our episodes of the Email Design Podcast at emaildesignpodcast.com. We have all the full show notes, all the previous episodes, lots of good interviews, discussions about the latest news in the email design world. And you can also follow along on Twitter using the hashtag Email Design Podcasts. Throw any questions you have for us there. We love interacting and getting those questions and answering them here on the podcast. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can do so on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. And a special thanks to our sponsor, Litmus, the company we both work for, the tool that we both love and couldn't live without and used for years before ever joining Litmus. It makes testing, tracking your emails, building your emails that much better. We can now test in over 80 different email clients these days. Using,
almost 90.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. I remember when it was like, 20 or something like that.
20.
So yeah, at almost 90 different email clients, you can use Litmus Builder to develop your email campaigns right in the browser, using amazing features like partials, snippets, sync to your ESP so you can sync your email templates quickly and easily. Use Litmus Analytics to track your email campaigns so you see where your subscribers are opening, what email clients are using, how long they're engaging with your emails, all that good stuff available through Litmus. And you can get a 14-day free trial just by going to litmus.com/gift card and using the coupon code podcast, which is absolutely awesome. Related to the community, we're doing a community roundup, so it's a great time to talk about community jobs. If you are looking for a new gig in the email industry, go to litmus.com/community/jobs is the best place to look, because they're all email specific jobs. So lots of great companies hiring right now. Stream Companies out of Malvern, Pennsylvania is hiring an HTML email developer. If you're in PA, that might be a good gig. They actually post a lot of jobs, so it seems like a very email-focused company, which is awesome. Digital Additive out of Atlanta, Georgia, is also hiring an email developer. So if you're down in Atlanta, you like that hot weather, then that might be an option for you. ThousandEyes over in San Francisco, California, is hiring an email marketing specialist. So a little bit more strategy focused, but you're probably still going to be doing a little bit of building, a little bit of sending, all that good stuff. And then Digital River out in the UK or Minnetonka, Minnesota, two options there for different office locations. They're hiring an email marketing analyst to analyze their email program, figure out how they can improve it, and all that good stuff that goes along with email strategy. So again, just go to litmus.com/community/jobs and find your next gig.
Good old Minnetonka. I mean, where could you pick a better place to work than Minnetonka? I mean, at this time of year, it's absolutely lovely. Minnetonka, that's great. All right, so this next question comes to us from Mike Hargreaves asking about looking to build interactive emails in MailChimp. And he says, so what are the limitations? Does it support interactivity at all? And the sad news is that MailChimp's parser strips out HTML5 elements, and they also do not support interactivity. So the check pseudo selector to use with checkboxes and radio buttons does not work to create click events. Justin Koo, which we covered in a couple of podcasts ago, recently came out with a new technique that he called the filmstrip technique, which does work in MailChimp. And it uses sort of the named anchors approach. And so he used sort of a interactive carousel as an example to showcase it. So it'll work in, Gmail, Android, as well, which is nice. iOS Mail, which typically has great support, and Samsung. So it doesn't have as broad support as sort of checkboxes and radio buttons would, but it does work in MailChimp. So if you have to try to do a workaround there, I haven't really investigated too much on, what additional types of interactivity you could do with this, but sort of if you're looking for something that is an example. Mike also asked, what ESPs would you rate as good for interactive emails? And it's basically the answer is any ESP that doesn't touch your code, right? You want any type of ESP that just leaves you alone and lets you send the email that you know that you're sending. It's like every ESP, we always joke, it's a big joke in the industry, but every ESP should just have a checkbox that says, I know what I'm doing, don't touch my code, checkbox or button. But that kind of runs the gamut. I know Campaign Monitor is really good for that support if you're looking for a smaller size type of ESP. I don't know if you have any other recommendations on that.
No, I mean, Campaign Monitor is probably one of my favorite ESPs. That's what I use personally. I know they don't do anything to your code, which is pretty awesome. So I definitely recommend checking that out. He did mention Marketo seems to support it as well, which is awesome. But yeah, just kind of...
It's been years since I've used
I haven't touched it for, I would say, probably about 5 years or something like that. But yeah, just look around, it is kind of sad that ESPs still mess around with your code. I understand that kind of defensive attitude. They might have people dumping stuff in there that don't know how to code emails. But yeah, I agree. We should have like a send my vanilla HTML and CSS, or don't fuck with my stuff kind of button on different ESPs so that we can send the emails that we want to send, our subscribers want to get. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that. MailChimp, if you need to use the filmstrip technique, then that's definitely an option. All right, moving on. Some confusion that comes up far too often in the Android world. Matt Pritchard's posted about a week ago asking if Android Oreo, the latest version of Android, had any update on email clients, so the default email client. So if you remember back in, what version was it? Android 6 or 7, where they updated the default vanilla email app to just be the Gmail app. So Android and Google are now pushing the Gmail app to be the default Android application across all instances of Android. So that's the same case in Android Oreo, the latest version. The only way you're going to run into different emails is if the vendor of the devices updates that email client for their own version of an email client. So the biggest example of that is Samsung. Samsung devices will ship with their own email application as the default, as opposed to something like Gmail. And that definitely has its own rendering quirks and stuff like that. But for the most part, Android users are going to be just opting into using Gmail and getting that experience, which, as we've seen over the past year or so, has improved drastically, which is good news. So yeah, Gmail as default on Android Oreo.
Yeah, so it started at 5.1. So 5.1 and above is Gmail, which I think the word default, it confuses so many people, right? Which I think is I think just the word default is causing some confusion. I almost feel like, and I haven't really thought about this until talking about this now. Maybe the better way is to say, what is the primary installed mail app, right? Because the default can mean a couple of things. So the primary installed app on any type of Android now for 5.1 and above is Gmail. But there's a default email app of the Android operating system, which is what confuses everybody. And that's what it used to be on Android 4.4 and below. And then they made the switch. So in all likelihood, you just really need to be worried about the Gmail app. That's why you've seen your Gmail opens increase over the past year or so, year plus, almost 2 years now, because they moved it to be the default one, and Gmail is just steadily growing outside of that as well. So in terms of like that default mail app of the Android operating system, it's not as big of a deal right now because it doesn't really have a big home. Like even Samsung, which has its own sort of bespoke email app, I think that was originally based off the old version, that was done before 4.4. So even Samsung supports media queries. Gmail supports media queries. There aren't like a ton of rendering concerns to have about all that for the most part. I mean, obviously there's, edge cases here and there, but for the large majority, you shouldn't have to worry about it too much. All right, final question coming at us from Daniel Kipp asking about full width on Gmail app for iOS. So this has been, I think, one of the bigger questions I've seen recently. People asking about Gmail app iOS. So on the Gmail app iOS, there's like this 20 pixels of padding on the right-hand side of just white space, which is just really weird native behavior of the Gmail app that we've asked them to fix. We don't know if that's going to happen or not, but there is a workaround to do this and to target Gmail exclusively. So what you can do is you can use your media query, a media query. So use a media query that will be on a device like that. I say just use 480 pixels. That'll be a good catch-all for all Android devices. So if you do media screen and max with 480 pixels, and then what you want to do is you want to use Gmail targeting, of which you can do it two ways. I personally like doing the U general sibling selector div approach because that doesn't rely on you adding any other types of classes or IDs. And what's happening there is that Gmail, it converts the doc type in your email to an underline tag in all of their clients. So you're able to to use that U as a targeting mechanism that no other client behaves that way and converts the doc type in that way. And then if you're just doing the general sibling selector of a div, that's sort of like the next one with the body. So you're able to do that with sort of min width 100 VW, and that setting a min width on the body of 100 VW is going to force it to be the full width. Additionally, you could also do U and then plus, so an adjacent sibling selector. And then you could put a class or an ID on it of body, for instance. It could be anything you want, but just to say body, just keep it simple. And then you're just going to still use that same min width 100 VW. But those are just a couple of different ways in which you could target Gmail. And if you're targeting it even with inside the media query, it won't affect Gmail on the desktop. So this is just a simple way to sort of force the full width on Gmail. It's only going to be applied for that email client using this media query. And it's a relatively, simple boilerplate type fix this way.
Love it. Nothing to add. Beautiful, simple, elegant fix.
All right.
I like
Short
those.
and sweet, man. Short and sweet. We're back next week on the Email Design Podcast. Don't forget, emaildesignpodcast.com. Full show notes, links, all these questions, everything we discussed is right there. We're up to over 80 episodes now, so make sure you catch up on all of them. You can subscribe to the podcast and catch all the episodes in your favorite place to listen to podcasts, whether that's SoundCloud, YouTube, or iTunes. We've got you covered. Tweet along with the hashtag Email Design Podcast. And as always, we have a free 14-day trial of Litmus. Just go to litmus.com/gift card and input the coupon code podcast.